When I initially started the Zapata Brand podcast, um, I wanted to have it about boxing, but I also wanted to be about the struggles of life and how boxing kind of intertwines the same way with life. You have struggles, you have good things, bad things happen, and it's always a fight. And that was my initial thought of the Zapata Brand podcast. Now it has morphed into things like mobsters and boxing, majority of combat sports, wrestling. But that was my main goal, to bring my audience, to bring them people who have gone through certain things and give you hope. My guest today, Zizo, is just that. And he's perfect for this podcast. It will give you the hope, and it'll also give you a roadmap of how you can push through with desire, hard work, determination, and never accepting no for an answer. That being said, enjoy the podcast.
Coming up next on the Zapata Brand podcast, he is Saudi Arabia's first pro boxer. He is also the first Saudi boxer to get a photo spread in Vogue magazine. Trained by boxing legend Buddy McGirt, the Zapata Brand welcomes undefeated Ziyad Zizo Almaayouf.
So, Zizo, I did a little research on you, and one of the things that I looked at, my podcast initially started as a life struggles, going through stuff. Now I was a boxer, so I kind of incorporated that in. So as I'm doing my research, I looked at some of the things that you did, and you actually said something that I always said: boxing and life are very similar. You go through all these struggles, but I noticed something when I was going through stuff, and I want to get into your past first. Is you have a different path because you are a very educated speaker. You talk very well. I noticed that. Is that the culture, or is that just how you grew up? If you could go back to where you first came from.
Yeah, I mean that's my dad. That's my
Mhm.
dad. I always like whenever any opportunity I get to mention where I get the speaking from or where I get anything I say from is from my dad. My
Mhm.
dad has always been a person since we were younger. Growing up, he's always like just occasionally sat us down to just give us lessons, or if we go through something at a younger age, even if it's just the typical, like, you're if it's bullying or a failed grade or a teacher that's against you, stuff, or a friend that's bothering you, or a friend that you had very close to your life that you've lost. Then when I entered into sports, if it's a fight that I lost or a coach that I had to leave, all this stuff, every single time I would go to my dad for advice on how to manage the situation, it would always be a lesson. It wouldn't ever be, how they tell you to teach the person how to fish, don't give him the fish. It was
Correct.
always like that. So my dad would never give me the solutions, but he'd give me all the tools I'd need to find the solution, and then
Mhm.
he'd tell me why every solution would work. So then as I grew up, I just learned more and more that anytime my dad speaks, I have to sit down and listen to him more and more, because like you said, boxing is very much like life. And everything I go through in boxing, especially the journey that I've come through, and what I had to break through in terms of a boxing system, it needed a lot of mental capacity and mental tools to solve and jump over the hurdles that are going to be in front of me. So that all came from my dad, that. And my dad was a psychology major, I'm a psychology major,
Mhm.
and I just interpret this with that, and just,
That,
yeah, the speaking part, it's always been in me since I was younger. You could put me anywhere and I'll wing it.
but it's not only just the speaking part. You speak well, and everything makes sense. You bring it all together, which makes now that you're telling your the majors that you
Yeah.
studied in, that makes sense. now. But it's is that the Arab culture
Yeah.
that the father is definitely more prominent?
Yeah, I mean it when you're younger, you're as I think any person, when you're younger, you're more attached to your mom, but then as you get older and as you face some issues that you maybe saw one of your parents, regardless of in the Arab culture, regardless of if it's the father, if it's the mother, you tend to go to the parent who's went through a similar situation like
Mhm.
you did. And my dad, he's went through a lot of similar situations that I had to go through in the boxing world or in life in general. If it's people set out to annoy me, people set out to stand in my way, make things fall apart in my boxing career, or just in my life or whatever it was. I saw a lot of that happen to him when I was younger, growing up in his business or with his friends or all of that stuff. So I always just went to him, to ask the questions that I found was similar to what I'm going through. And it is very much like that in the Arab culture, where you usually go to the dad for a lot of advice, but the mom, if she's went through something that the dad hasn't, you go to the mom as well.
Right, and I say that because, I listen to Patrick Bet-David a lot, and he loves his dad, and
Mm.
he's from the Arab culture, so having the father on such a high pedestal, unlike here in America for some odd
Yeah.
reason, it's a little different. The culture is a little different. We have no idea what's going on here.
Yeah.
But, I love that about you, the way you respect your father and how you talk about your father. That's missing here. So,
Oh yeah.
who was Zizo in high school?
Oh man, Zizo in high school was just the Zizo who would always look for any opportunity to find self-value. That's how I always like to think of myself in high school. I wasn't really the best when it came to academics and the grades, but I was always the best in finding ways to get to the grades I needed, or to get through, just developing a good relationship with my teachers. I was always just communicating with them, and all that. But Zizo in high school was a guy that just liked to do the plays, liked to do the musicals, liked to MC the talent shows. I was always that person who liked to be, under the light. I really like that, and it's a big passion of mine. If it's the acting, or if it's just rising up to the occasion. That's what I really liked about it. When you're doing something, if it's in a talent show, if it's in a play, a musical, or just we're in the production of something happening around high school, I always liked when it all came together under pressure, because it
Mhm.
was something completely different when you're doing it without the pressure, and it's something amazing when you do it and do it even better under the pressure. So that was just me in high school. I had a good group set of friends. I had a good set of friends, and I still take them with me until today. Every single fight week, I travel with the same four friends that me and them were practically raised together. And ever since I was younger, I've just always visualized that this is how I was gonna make it happen.
Now, are they friends or are they family? Like cousins or are they friends?
No, friends that have
Friends.
turned into family. you
Okay,
know,
okay.
you find a lot of family in friends, and that's what I found in them.
Okay, because even in our ethnic background, Hispanic, Puerto Rican, we tend
Mhm.
to we're very clingy, similar to
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the Arab culture. We keep our friends very close, and they're like family,
yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
very tight knit. So, as you were in high school, when did you first? What was your first foray into boxing? Because, um, and in your background here, for those who don't know, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, where you lived in both.
Mhm.
Egypt more with your dad, Saudi Arabia with your mother, but you were more
My
toward
Saudi Arabia with my dad. Yeah,
Saudi Arabia
Egypt.
with your dad, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Egypt
yeah,
with your mom. The boxing, football was soccer here, and we call it soccer. Football was the predominant sport. No boxing. What clicked to say, "I'm gonna do that"?
Well, in the Arab world in general, we don't have independent sport gyms for we don't have individual gyms for each individual sport, or for each sport. Like there isn't a
Okay.
specific gym for a sport. You won't find tennis in a tennis center, or you won't find boxing at a boxing gym. What we have is big sports centers. Think of it like a country club, and when you go into that sports center, you tend to see all sports training in their designated areas. So the tennis courts are there, the football fields are there, whatever it was. So the basketball courts are there as well. Every single sport had its own designated area and equipment, and even like buildings. They had their own specific thing, except boxing. Boxing didn't have any equipment, didn't have any buildings or gyms, or whatever it was. It didn't have anything. So where they were was the running track. It was just a coach standing with his mitts on the running track, and everybody comes at a specific time to get their rounds on the mitts, and then they do their strength and conditioning on the monkey bars, and then they leave. So I used to play tennis when I was 9, 10 years old. I used to play tennis at that time, and when we'd warm up for tennis before heading out to the courts, we'd go to the running track. And every single day, we'd go out to that running track, and every single day, I'd see the boxing people on the running track training.
Mhm.
And as I saw that intensity, and I saw that, motivation in the training, and I could just tell, just by watching, the amount of pressure that's on everyone training, even if it was just
Yeah.
hitting the mitts. And I went back home and I said, this is what I want to do. This is actually what I want to do. I want to box. And I started talking to my parents about it, and they said the fastest no I've ever heard in my life. Yeah, not only because it's a violent sport or it's a combat sport, and we're 9 siblings, so my dad didn't want one of us to be violent or anything, so he has more
Right.
control over it. But
Mhm.
but also because I was already in a sport that my dad saw a future in. My dad, at that time, we knew that there was, business in tennis, there was money in tennis, and tennis was a sport. My dad has always loved individual sports. I've always loved individual sports. So you get to control your own game, and there's a future in the sport. A lot of Saudis and a lot of Egyptians had already made it out of tennis. We're also the world leading in squash. So we've always had a very good idea in that sport. But I kept insisting on boxing, and my dad was always traveling back and forth between Saudi Arabia and Egypt. And when he left one time for work, I went to my mom and I was like, come on, like, give me, let's work together, let's do some business together. And she took me to box behind my dad's back for a whole year. I quit tennis. I went to box for a whole year at the age of 11. And
Right.
it was behind my dad's back up until he went to pick up his son from tennis practice one day, and he wasn't there.
Now, how we as far as tennis goes, how far of a level did you get with tennis? Were you a good tennis player? Because your dad kind of saw it in a business perspective. Doesn't want his son getting hurt. Doesn't want any of that.
Yeah.
Because down the road, boxing can be a rough ending.
Yeah.
Tennis, n- not so much.
Oh, yeah.
Bad knees, maybe, but you're
Yeah.
not getting hit in the head.
Exactly. Yeah,
So now your
exactly.
mom takes you there. What kind of level did your dad see as far as tennis goes? Because he obviously
So
saw future.
yeah, well, I was at 10 years old, I was doing very well just at the national level. Didn't do anything international, but I was doing very well at the state and national level. I was winning tournaments, and I was a good tennis player. But I just I when I went back home and I started researching boxing, and
Mhm.
I started looking up Saudi Arabian champions, Saudi Arabian boxing champions, and found none, Arab boxing champions, and found none. I said, that's what I really want to do. That's what I really want to do. And as a kid, you look again, when I was explaining in school, I was just a kid that was always looking for the self-value. And I feel like any kid always looks for self-value, self-respect. And I found that through doing what is unique to everyone else, doing what anyone else wouldn't dare to do, or wouldn't have courage to do, or wouldn't even just be able to do it. And so when I would walk into school and I would be the only kid at school that boxes, I felt like I was separated. That was self-value. That
Yeah.
was self-respect, you know? The only kid that was medaling at boxing tournaments, that gave me that value and that self-respect, you know, that I needed as a kid, and that self-confidence. You know, it really made a big difference with my life. But then growing up, when I really started to look into the career and researching fighters from the Arab world and from Saudi Arabia to idolize, I didn't find any. That's where I said, that's what I want to do. And when I spoke to my dad about it, he'd always think that boxing was just a hobby for me. And I would always explain to my dad that it's more than just a hobby. And then one year, going into high school, he said, "You know what? I believe you that it's not a hobby, but if you want to take this seriously and if you want it to be a career, you're going to have to prove to me that you are going to take it seriously and it's going to be a career. Because if you're going to be in a combat sport getting hit in the head, you have to live like you are trying your best not to get hit in the head." And by that, he meant, what time am I sleeping? What time am I waking up? You know, who am I hanging out with? Who are my friends? Who is my circle? When I go out, where do I go out? You know? So it's like he always just wanted me to live like the professional boxer before I even made it to professional boxing, long before.
So when you initially, there had to be a time in your life where you said, "Okay, there has to be a Nelson Mandela, there has to be a Martin Luther King, there has to be a Malala." You are now anointed that as a kid, that's something that's very rare. Because kids mostly say, I don't want any part of that. I just want to go blend in." You're
Yeah.
opposite. So the mentality that you have is definitely one stronger. It's definitely stronger because you're going against the grain of your peers. So at what point did you decide, was it in high school or after high school, to say, this is my path?
It was high school. I mean, I've
Okay.
always knew that this was my path. I've always had it in my mind that I want to be able to travel abroad. I want to go turn pro. This is where we have so much history that is left to be written. There is no history that is written in professional boxing. I knew that I wanted to make it abroad, and I've always knew that boxing was my path. But in high school, I started seeing that, like you said, I started seeing that mixture between my character and my sport. And I said, I could not only chase the path of boxing, but I could be more than a boxer. I could be more than an athlete. You know, I could be a figure to Saudi Arabia, to the Arab world. I could be a figure for everyone coming after me. And it was a lot of pressure that I loved taking on, though, because again, it gave me that self purpose. It gave me so much purpose, so much self value, and so much self respect. And now it was time for me to start inspiring others to have that same value, that same respect to themselves, that same purpose to themselves, no matter how, you know, no matter the grains stacked against them, like you said.
Mhm.
So it's you just, like, it was something, it was a no-brainer for me. It was a
Okay.
no-brainer because I'm given history to write, and you know, God, the universe, a higher power, whatever you believe in, was presented it in front of me, in front of my eyes, and said, "Here you go. Go and write history." It was a no-brainer. I can never turn that down.
And as I look at that as a kid, if I was a kid, I'm going to put myself, I'm going to date myself here, 96. 96, I was about that age at high school. The pressure that you're putting on yourself is something that you're willing to take. Am I correct? So
Yeah.
do you, when you go to the ring, are you Egypt, Saudi Arabia? Do you just, is it both?
Well,
Meaning,
you know what? I'm Saudi Arabian going into the ring,
okay,
but I'm human in the ring. You
okay.
know what I mean?
And
So
the reason
this
why I say that is because in our country, for some reason, there's very rare that you have a guy with an American flag,
Mm.
okay, that the country gets behind. When I look at all the other countries, Puerto Rico, Mexico, Saudi Arabia, you know, is Pakistan, they carry a flag and that whole country's behind them. So now
Oh yeah.
you got to remember That's all their hopes, all their dreams are on your shoulders.
Exactly.
Are you are so now do you realize the magnitude that you have?
Yeah, definitely. Oh yeah,
And
just
you're
and
okay
like
with
you
that.
see, it puts a smile on my face, you know, because
Mhm,
look, the pressure is always gonna be on in anything we do. So if you're doing good, the pressure is there to maintain it. If you're doing bad, the pressure is there to do better, you know. And then it's also the pressure that you put on yourself. Sometimes you have no pressure from as many people as you are saying are putting, you know, the pressure on me or their hopes on my shoulders. Sometimes you could put that same amount of pressure on yourself. You
mhm,
alone could put that same amount of pressure on yourself, trying to achieve a goal or trying to achieve something no one's achieved, or trying to even achieve something, being the first in your family, or all of this. Pressure is always gonna come in so many different ways, but the
mhm,
pressure that's on me from Saudi Arabia, from Egypt, from the Arab world, it's something beautiful. And what you said about, you see fighters carrying a flag into the ring,
yeah,
and you got the whole country behind them. With the Arab world, it's different. It's even more, because with the Arab world, if you carry a flag from the Arab world, no matter the country in the Arab world, you've got the whole Arab world behind you. You've got the whole Arab world with you. It's like you've got Jordan, you've got Morocco, you've got Syria, you've got Saudi Arabia, Egypt, you know, all of the countries are behind you. So that's
right,
the beautiful thing about it, you know, and that's what I meant was I always found value in not only doing it for myself, but doing it for so many other people. And when you're doing
mhm,
something no one's ever done before, but so many people wish to and want to do it, and you could be the one to carry that torch. The pressure puts a smile on my face then.
mhm. So as you were growing up there in, Saudi Arabia, there wasn't really much you were saying it was more of like a sports complex, wasn't there? You have to come to the United States to start your amateur career? 'Cause you weren't pro when you left
Yeah,
to
yeah,
come to
yeah.
you came to LA, did you not?
Yeah, I look. The only thing we knew back in the Arab world was Wild Card and Manny Pacquiao. We knew Manny Pacquiao because Manny
Mhm,
Pacquiao was that, you know, that torch for the Philippines, as I'm being the torch for Saudi Arabia and the Arab world. So he was that for not only the Philippines but really for the world, because of how big he was in the Philippines. So we'd always research Manny Pacquiao, and we always knew Manny Pacquiao was at the wild card, and Manny
mhm,
Pacquiao was in Los Angeles. So in my senior year, in 11th grade and junior and senior year, I just focused on my studies so bad because I knew that I wanted to apply to every single university in Los Angeles where I could go and train at the same gym that Manny Pacquiao trains at. I said, this is where I'm gonna go. I need to travel. I need to in the Arab world, Saudi Arabia and Egypt, we had three amateur tournaments a year. You had
mhm,
states, you had nationals, and you had the national team qualifiers. That's it. You had one more friendly tournament during the year. So that makes four tournaments a year. If you fight, if you're the best one in Saudi, Egypt, or the Arab world as a whole, if you're the best one in the region and you fight four tournaments a year, that's 20 fights a year. You know, if you're fighting those
yeah,
five fights, all four fights, you know, so you're fighting 20 fights a year compared to the 20 fights a month, or you know, 20 fights a month that someone might fight in the US, you know. So
right,
it's relative. It was just something that showed me that I need to go abroad to fight more, and this is where the IQ was. This is where the boxing knowledge was, because in the Arab world we don't even have boxing on TV. So I went to LA and I walked into the Wildcard gym and I was looking for Manny Pacquiao and I was looking for Freddie Roach. And you know, I was like, train me, you know, I am the first fighter from Saudi Arabia. That was long, long before Saudi Arabia got involved into boxing. That was even long before Saudi Arabia started open up the country touristically. So I was just chasing that career since then because I said I want to do it for the country, for the region.
right.
And so when I went abroad, I fought about four times, four amateur fights in the few months that I was in the US before COVID shut down everything. COVID
Now
shut down.
for context, was did Freddie Roach train you for these fights or no?
No, no,
Okay.
I had Coach Sammy. He's a
Oh, okay.
known guy at the
Yeah.
wild card. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. So I had Sammy at the wild card train me, and he was just such a vibe. You know, it was
Mhm.
he's a coach that I connect with deeply until today. I'm always calling him, always asking about him. But I had Coach Sammy at the wild card, and it was the day of the Golden Gloves, the day of the weigh-ins of the Golden Gloves, that COVID shut down everything. It was like,
Yeah.
oh, the Golden Gloves is canceled because of COVID, and we didn't know that COVID would, close everything for the year.
Yeah.
But me and Sammy started training at a garage. His garage, he had a bag up and some, equipment, and we used to go every single day for months and months and months at a time. And what happened during COVID was the Olympics got postponed. And when the Olympics got postponed, I reached out to everyone and anyone in Saudi, asking them that I wanted to represent Saudi. I wanted to be the first ever boxer to represent Saudi at the Olympics. I wanted to do it. And when the Olympics was postponed, I had a chance. So the Saudi Boxing Federation then responded, and they started, guiding me towards that path, but they were very slow in responding at that time, because again, that was prior to all the changes and all the revamping of everything happening in the country. So sports in general wasn't really big in Saudi Arabia. It wasn't really big in
Right.
the Arab world, except if it's soccer, football.
Yep.
So at the end of the day, the International Olympic Committee, after preparing for the Olympics for so many months, canceled the last chance qualifiers that was supposed to be in May of that year in Paris. They canceled it only for the African and Asian qualifiers because they said COVID was at high numbers there. And so they reallocated the places based on previous points gathered from previous years. I didn't have anything, so all the years hard works went away for that goal. But preparing for the Olympics, we walked into a gym to start sparring with the pros, and it was only a pro gym that's open because only the pro boxing game was open during the COVID times, and that gym was Buddy McGird's gym.
And where was that gym? Florida?
Yeah, no, that was in LA. It
He had
was
one in L he had one in
He was
LA?
no, he was training at one in LA.
Okay.
It was known to be, the gym that Buddy's at. It was called Blue Moon Boxing at the time. Now it's
Okay.
Showtime Boxing. It's in I think it's Van Nuys now.
Okay. So when you went so now you hooked up with Buddy Gert. You go
Yeah,
down
because
there.
I
Now how
as an amateur, I was a kid that wasn't even close to as good as the amateurs abroad, as the amateurs in the States, not even close. And when COVID shut down everything amateur, Coach Sammy was looking for gyms for us to train because we needed sparring for the Olympics. So then he said, I know a gym that's open. And I said, whose gym? And he said, don't worry about it. He said, that's exactly what he said. And before I go to that next part, Coach Sammy saw a strength in my jab. And so Coach Sammy would always send me back to my dorm room. That's where I was staying at the time. And I have videos until today on Instagram where Buddy McGirt is mentioned 3 years before I met him, before I even knew he was in LA or before I even knew he was a trainer. Coach Sammy told me go back and study the jab of Buddy McGirt and the jab of Mike McCullum. That's what he told me. He said, Buddy McGirt and Mike McCullum, and study the body punches of Mike McCullum. I was like, okay. So I stayed 2 years studying Buddy McGirt's jab over and over and over. And then one day we walk into a gym and in walks Buddy McGirt. And I didn't even know who he was. And I'm asking everybody because he's so loud. He walks in, hey, what's up, baby? What's up? So
Yeah.
I'm asking everybody, who's that? And they're like, Buddy McGirt. I'm like, Buddy McGirt? That's a guy I've idolized him and his jab for so long. Mentioned on my story for years before we met. So then we start sparring to prepare for the Olympics, and I'm only sparring pros. And like when I tell you it was the closest thing to death that I've ever been to till today. That jump between not being a good enough amateur in the States to trying to be as good as the pros, not any pros, but the pros at Buddy McGird's gym. So you're talking about Adam Lopez, Carlos Balderas. These guys were them, you know. So you're sparring these guys, and I'm just getting my behind handed to me so bad. Fractured ribs, you know, fractured jaws, everything you could think of, I had fractured. So Buddy saw that though, because these were Buddy's guys. Buddy saw that I would keep coming back. I kept coming back and I kept improving and improving. And so one day I saw Buddy sitting on a chair alone, and I don't know what came to me, but I went and I rushed and I sat next to him. I was like, would you train me? You know, I was preparing for that moment for months, months, talking to Adam Lopez. And would you think Buddy would train you? Talking to Carlos, would do you think Buddy would train me? Do you think he would help me out? And they're like, you know, you could try and stuff. And I sit next to him. I'm like, would you be able to train me? You know, and he knew nothing about my story. He didn't know I was Saudi, and again, it was before Saudi ever, you know, did anything in the boxing world. He didn't know I was half Egyptian. Didn't know I was from the Arab world. Didn't know the story, and he said yes straight away. He's like, "I'll train you." He said, "I remember." He said, "I'll train you. You have a very good jab." He said, "You
Which
have a
is
very good
something
jab."
how
Yeah,
ironic. How
yeah.
ironic.
He said, "I'll train you." He said, "You have a very good jab." And then when I told him my story, all of a sudden everything changed for my life, and Buddy was there from the beginning.
Now I remember Buddy McGirt, growing up. I mean,
Hmm.
he's from the East Coast. I remember him
Yeah.
when he fought Whitaker, when he fought Glenwood Brown. I
Oh,
remember him for years going in. So you're under the right learning tree. Buddy McGirt is
oh yeah.
definitely old school. You're gonna learn a plethora of stuff from Buddy
Oh
McGirt.
yeah.
Definitely stuff that couldn't be done overseas. It couldn't.
Yeah.
Because our style here is very different than European or in that world.
It's
But
culture.
what
It's
it's what?
culture. That's what I say.
Yeah.
It's culture. You know, that's where different boxing in the US is culture. You are born with a boxing brain naturally. You know what I mean? That's just how
Mhm,
it is in the US is, and it's even more different than Europe, because I feel like in the US a very big part of the culture is sports, and the even bigger
mhm.
part of the culture is boxing. Has been a staple for the US. So yeah, it's definitely embedded in the blood.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because last weekend I saw Ireland came over here to box some of our amateurs over here,
Mm,
and they didn't do well.
mm,
Ireland didn't do well.
yeah,
It's a different they're just more slapping, more trying to point. It wasn't good. They got stopped. I think about 4 fighters got stopped. It
yeah.
wasn't good. It's definitely a different you're definitely gonna learn a lot more what fighting is
Oh
on
yeah,
this side. But
oh
here's
yeah.
something that I question. The Arab world, though, is big in wrestling. They're tough.
Mm.
Is that a sport over there in Egypt and Saudi Arabia? That's a a big sport? 'Cause they're tough. They're tough
So
from there.
so in the Arab world, in Saudi Arabia especially, the Minister of Sports in Saudi Arabia, someone I really look up to, His Royal Highness Prince Abdulaziz bin Turki Al Faisal, that's his
Mhm.
name.
Yep.
He said a quote that he said, before they opened up the country and the sports sector of the country for their athletes. He said the athletes were like as if they were at a traffic stop that was always red, never turned green. He said, when we
Mhm.
opened up the athletic and the sports sector the way we are doing now, they were ready. They were waiting. They were ready. We just gave them the opportunity. That's what he said. And
Okay.
that's exactly what happened in Saudi Arabia. As soon as they started giving out the opportunities, we started getting the gold medals in judo, in karate, we started getting the female tennis players. You know, we started getting the Olympic rowers. We start getting the medalists here and there in such a short time because everyone was just working but didn't have the opportunity. Saudi Arabia gave the opportunity. The Minister of Sports and His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, of course, they gave the opportunity. In the Arab world in general, we have so much talent. We have so much
Yeah, I
talent. We
know.
have so much willpower. We have a different mentality. We're bred very different mentally as well. As you said, in the US, the culture is in the sports. In the Arab world, the culture is in will. It's in will, it's in discipline, it's in motivation. That's just in the culture. So in Saudi Arabia, they opened up with the opportunities without any, you know, cheating of the opportunities. I'll say that. That it's the truth, but it's the sad truth. In Egypt and in many parts
Mhm.
of the Arab world until now, what we are seeing is just lack of opportunity, not lack of athletes, not lack of, talent, just lack of opportunity. Sometimes the person who really qualifies to go and represent at the Olympics is the person who has an uncle working at the Olympic Federation or the Olympic Committee, has a
Okay.
father who is a trainer at the national team, coaching staff. That's the problem. That I'm sure it's not only in the Arab world, but that is the biggest problem in the Arab world. Not only that part, just opportunity. We don't have the financials to start
Okay.
sending players abroad. We don't have the financials to invest with equipment and stuff. But this is changing. And if it's not changing at a good enough pace, this is what I'm trying to do for the Arab world and for Saudi Arabia, is make it even change even faster and faster and give people even more hope. Saudi Arabia is giving enough change and hope, but if I could just contribute to as a percentage of that change and hope, that's what I'm doing here. I always say I'm not just an athlete or a boxer for Saudi Arabia, I'm a representative for the country and their vision.
And you are a great representative. Doing my research, I mean, I'm very impressed of what you've done. And excuse my ignorance of the Crown Prince. I did a little research, um, and I was listening to it. He is trying to be a little more progressive into the Western
Mhm.
civilization that we have. Um, some of the stuff that he's doing is getting a little more progressive. I did hear something about boyfriend, girlfriend, you're allowed to date or what have you. I did hear that. I don't know if that's true or not on that end, but it seems like he's more open minded than
Yeah,
the previous administration. That
yeah.
helps you guys.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. And I haven't heard anything, and I don't know too much about the areas you've just spoken about. But what I know
Mhm.
is the Crown Prince's vision. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. His vision is to not only turn Saudi Arabia, more to the Western side, but it's actually the opposite. It's to turn the Western side more to Saudi Arabia, and then when you bring the world to Saudi, you end up mixing cultures, you end up mixing people, languages, and you bring unity that doesn't just positively impact Saudi Arabia, but it also positively impacts everyone coming to Saudi Arabia, the West and the Europeans. Everyone coming into Saudi Arabia also benefits from that unity and that mixture in culture, because it just shows at the end of the day, we're not so different after all. We speak just like you, we treat everyone just like you, smile just like you,
Mhm.
everything. And it also opens up more job opportunities, helps the economies of both sides of the world, and it also business opportunities, not just in workers and labor, but also for bigger and bigger deals that would unite one side of the world with the other. And in doing so, you would inspire a future generation. So that's the whole vision, is to inspire not only the current generation, but also a whole future generation coming out of Saudi Arabia, and a whole future generation coming out of the West and in Europe that used to be worried about coming to Saudi Arabia and that side of the world. Now they get to come and see for themselves that it's not like it was, it's not like it was portrayed. It's not like it was,
Right.
interpreted. So when you come and you visit Saudi Arabia, and maybe you are a little worried in the beginning, or you're a little, just watching over your shoulders because you're around the unfamiliar crowd and unfamiliar country. When you go for a big event that's happening, that's why Saudi Arabia is bringing those big events. When you come, it's something that you are familiar with. So no matter how worried you are when you go to Saudi Arabia in the beginning before you change your mind after you've seen it, at least you can tell yourself, well, you know what? At least I've been to a boxing fight before. At least I'll see people at the boxing fight who I can connect with. If I'm at the
Mhm.
boxing event, I will feel like I've been there before. I'll feel familiar. I will feel comfortable. So that's why
Right.
tourism is being opened through entertainment events and sports, not only to inspire a generation from Saudi, but to also make a generation from the West and Europe feel more comfortable to come and see Saudi Arabia for themselves.
Okay, good. So, you are a great spokesman for it. And when you came here and you said, "I'm gonna turn pro here," you came turn pro in the United States.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Yeah.
What was going through your mind when you first said, "Okay, fight signed, you're on your way down to get down, no headgear, smaller gloves." What's going through your mind? What is Zizzo saying in the locker room prior to that?
Well, it's the problem is, for a lot of people don't know, but I had three canceled fights before my debut, my professional debut.
Oof.
So, and the biggest one of them was that was the worst one, honestly. For all the canceled fights, I did a full camp. They all got canceled fight week, but one of
Oh,
them got canceled in the locker room. I had my fight outfit on. I'm ready.
in the
I've
locker room.
sold. Oh yeah, I've sold over 200 tickets. I have the outfit on. Everybody's waiting outside. My fight is coming up right now. And because of my canceled fights, I've started to become so familiar with the California Commission. They know this is the kid that always gets his fights canceled.
Uh-huh,
I was like, sorry, you go in, you treat the California Commission like you're their family because of how many fights I've gotten canceled.
right.
So then at the locker room, I'm sitting, I'm warming up, I'm getting my hands wrapped, all of this. I've just had my hands wrapped. And then that same guy from the California Commission walks in and he's like, Zizo, you're not going to believe this. I was like, don't say it, then. Don't say it. He's like, your opponent came in and declared his own drug test. Like before the results even came in, he went and told us, I took something last night. He said it
Oh
himself.
my god.
Yeah, yeah. He said so. Yeah, we tried talking to the commissioner, but we all know how the Nevada and the California commissions are.
Oh, they're tough.
They're tough. They're the toughest. So he was like, we tried to talk to the commissioner. We even explained to him that this is your third fight. But he said absolutely not. He said absolutely not, and the fight has to get canceled.
What did
And
he take? Did he take marijuana or something
yeah,
or
yeah, yeah. He
oh,
just smoked marijuana. Yeah,
jeez.
it was. I couldn't
Oh,
believe it. I couldn't believe it, man. I was heartbroken and I was devastated because I had a very big social media following even at that time. So a
mhm.
lot of people were staying up because of the time difference to watch my
Yeah.
fight. People, sleeping over at other people to watch the fight. And I had over 200 people that I had sold tickets to. It was in downtown LA. And oh man, I remember I just rested my head on one of my friend's shoulders and I started crying. I was like, I don't know what to do. Nobody's gonna take me seriously. And what am I to do anymore? Now this is the third fight. I think this is like a sign. I finished
Mhm.
that night. I was devastated up until I went home. Very upset. The next morning, I'm not even kidding. Like if you could write this in a book, it wouldn't be like this. The next morning, someone from Saudi Arabia contacts me about making my debut on the Usyk Joshua card. Just like that. I
Wow.
mean, I still have the message. It was all on messages on Instagram. I still have
Mhm.
it until today. Somebody just sending me a message out of nowhere. We've never spoken to before, nothing. And he goes like, "Hello, Zizo. We've heard about you. We've been seeing your social media posts. Please give me a number that I can call you straight away." He calls me and he says, Prince Khalid of Saudi Arabia, he's helping out with the sports sector and he's having a very, very big fight. And he said specifically, I want the Saudi kid Zizo on it. So we want you to make your debut. And then the guy on the phone said, and also, we want you to fight on it. So how did your fight yesterday go? I was like, if I told you, you wouldn't believe it. Now it's
This is
now it went amazing.
now this is really how this comes together is almost like divine intervention where
Exactly.
how it comes together like this. I always say it's just the way how I got married, but it just came together so perfectly
Yeah, yeah. From
that
the
now
beginning, from meeting Buddy after studying
how it
Buddy
yeah.
to all that stuff, it just leaves me in awe. And then even when I think about it, the three canceled fights that have always only been canceled during fight week and one in the locker room, when I made my actual debut on such a huge card in front of my home crowd, being the first ever from Saudi Arabia, the only thing I had to worry about was the fight itself, not
Mhm.
like what you might regularly worry about during fight week, during your first fight. Sometimes you'd worry about fight week, you'd worry about the whole camp, you'd worry about the weight loss, you'd worry about injury, sparring. But no, all those three canceled fights that I had went through taught me so much about myself and how to deal with specific issues that might arise in camp, that when I did the one that actually led me to the fight without any cancellations, it was like my fourth fight. It wasn't actually my debut. The only thing
Mhm.
that was my first fight was my debut, was the fight itself. And like you said, walking in there without any headgear, all of that,
Yeah.
oh my god. That was
So
that's the stuff
this
that
is this is now on a larger scale here. I think there was about 30,000 at that event.
yeah.
You're making your debut. You're
Oh yeah.
the Saudi boxer making his pro debut,
Yeah.
Zizo, social media star, what so take me to the locker room. You're ready to go out. Buddy's there with you.
Yeah.
What's going through your mind? Because this could go really good or it could go really bad.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, definitely, definitely.
But
But
again, you told me you love the pressure. So
exactly.
so that helped you. But where did
Yeah.
you what was going through your mind right before you're going out? You got the crowd chanting Zizo, Zizo. What's going through your mind?
Well, you know what? For me, the pressure gives me something to rise up to. If I didn't have that
Mhm,
much pressure on me, I it wouldn't have ensured a win, and I'm gonna come back and touch on that later. But as soon as I moved abroad to the US, being away from family, knowing that I wouldn't come back to visit for probably 2, 3 years in a row, I knew that what I would suffer from most was my mental part, not the physical aspect. I know I had natural ability, maybe some talent, and anybody can do the physical part if they're under the right guidance, but it's the mental part that stops us so much. And having studied psychology when I first went there, I started knowing more and more how important it was. So as soon as I moved abroad, the first thing I started to look for before even looking for a coach was a sports psychologist. And
yeah,
that went from sports psychologist to a mental performance coach. Now, I first started working with a sports psychologist in the US, but it we couldn't connect on a culture base, on a morals and values. Why are you doing this? I'm doing this for my parents. He didn't really connect the same way just because of difference in culture. When I say I'm doing this for my parents in the Arab world, that means something else completely. That could motivate me from
yeah,
here until I retire. That's all I need to be doing it for.
mhm,
Like we saw, for example, with Khabib and UFC. He retired
yeah,
when his father passed away. That's why he was doing it, and that's it. So then I started looking for a sports psychologist in the Arab world, and I found a guy called Haitham. And this guy changed my life, and I couldn't believe he was in the Arab world. There was no background in sports psychology in the Arab world at all, and he's a sports
yeah,
mental performance coach. And so I
mhm,
contacted him. We started working together, and he started teaching me ways on how to deal with doubt, fear, pressure, and not only how to deal with them, but also how to use them in my favor. And the biggest one was how to expect them. Because when you expect something, once it comes, it doesn't shock you. You're able to control it because you've been expecting it. It's as if like you're
right,
sitting at home, you're expecting a guest, you're gonna have everything prepared for him, the tea, the water, the food. But if a guest
Yeah.
comes uncalled for, you're not going to have anything ready. The house might not even be clean. So it's the same thing exactly, and that's what he prepared me for. So the debut led up to a year or two of me working with that mental performance coach. And he also does this part, and the other part he does is reaction time, patience, problem solving with mental games and stuff like that. So he's this is what he taught me. So in that locker room, leading up to the fight, having Coach Buddy in the locker room is just amazing, because you could just
Mhm.
think to yourself, this is a person who's done it, who's been there, done that, and done it at exactly the same weight classes that I want to do it at, and also he's a Hall of Famer. So whatever I'm feeling and whatever he says, I trust it 100% because he's done it. And then
Mhm.
also the personality that Coach Buddy has in the locker room just calms you down. It's all jokes and it's fun. And like the commissioner that was in the locker room came to me after the fight and told me, please, if you fight again, just sign up for my name for me to be in your locker room. Because he loved it. We were laughing and all that. But the doubt was there, the fear was there, the worry was there, but it's okay for it to be there. That's the thing. It's like the more we run away from the emotions, the more they run after us. So I knew that I'm about to make my debut in front of 10K plus people. If I'm about to make my debut and I'm not even worried or doubtful or a little scared, then something's wrong with me. Then I'm not winning that fight. I'm
Right.
too calm. And one thing that really was amazing that fight week is I sat down with Evander Holyfield, and it was
Oh, my favorite
Buddy.
fighter.
Yeah, Buddy sat down with Evander Holyfield. I was passing by. I was like, I can't believe this is a table happening right now. Prince Nassim was there as well. Roberto Duran. I just sat down. I was in awe. And Evander Holyfield said the one fight, the first fight, he lost. He said he knew he was gonna lose before he actually fought the fight. And I was like, I asked him, wait, what do you mean? I'm about to make my debut. I'm like, so wait, what do you mean? He goes, usually before all my fights, I'm dripping in sweat because I'm nervous. He said, the one fight I wasn't dripping in sweat and I wasn't nervous, I lost. And I was like, oh my God. That made it so much better
Yeah.
for me going into that fight, because when I was nervous in that locker room, when I was worried, I knew that's normal. If Evander Holyfield felt it, I could feel it. You know?
Yeah. Now take that. What you just said was important because most people don't realize this.
Yeah.
Me, not on your level. I was an amateur. Um, the battle that you have in your head is
Oh.
like, I'm good. I'm good. Oh, what if I do? Oh, I'm good. I'm good. That's normal.
Hmm.
That's very
Oh yeah,
normal.
definitely.
For you saying that is for my audience to look at that because I have a lot of amateurs that watch the podcast too. That's a normal reaction in your mind of back and forth. Yes, no, yes, no.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Even a bigger word to use instead of normal is natural.
Mhm.
That's what's supposed to happen. It's not okay if it happens. It's supposed to happen. There's a difference. Something that is okay to happen might or might not happen, but something that is natural to happen will happen. And that's
Okay.
what these emotions are. When you are met with doubt, fear, and worry, before a fight or before something so big you're about to do, moments come with emotions. That's just one plus one is two. So the bigger the
Mhm.
moment, the bigger the emotions, and that's fine, but how you control your emotions is what's important right now. And like you mentioned, a lot of amateur boxers or athletes and boxers watching the show, I just want to say that visualization is the key, and
Mm.
that's something that I've been practicing through my mental performance coach and through psychology as well, is visualization. And it's just the art of being in a place before you're actually physically in the space. So you visualize, for example, throughout the whole camp or throughout fight week, you just visualize yourself in that locker room. You close your eyes, you put yourself in that locker room. Sometimes you could even rearrange your room like what a locker room might be. You start sitting down and you put an hour or two timer on, you're preparing for everything. Just do everything. Close your eyes, pretend you're doing everything, and pretend like right now I'm feeling doubt. What am I going to do about it? Then pretend you're scared. What are you going to do about it? Keep visualizing these emotions, and the most important thing is to visualize how you are going to deal with the emotions. So when it actually happens in the moment in the locker room, when it happened to me, I've been there so many times. I think thousands of times in my head, where I was worried and in doubt in the locker room, but I dealt with it. So when I had to do it one more time in the locker room, it was just another time. And that's exactly what happened. It's okay to feel these emotions. We're fighters at the end of the day. It's a risky and it's a dangerous sport, and a lot is at stake, not just for everyone watching, but for you as well. So, it's very, very natural to have these emotions, but dealing with them, staying in the present is really what makes it happen.
Yeah, and visualization, I use it in my business. I own a bagel shop, a bagel
Uh-huh,
business,
uh-huh.
and I train kids too here, and they don't understand. It's hard for them because I think our culture here is a little softer
Yeah,
in the United States here. So I'm trying to get them into a place where this is going to happen. You're going
mhm,
to have to mentally and visually look at and see how you get out of that position.
yeah.
Not just say, "Oh, mom, get me out." That doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work. You're in a different sport. So, as you go into now you're approaching your first fight, you're getting it ready to get to the ring, you're ready to make the
Oh yeah.
walk.
Mhm.
What is going through your mind now?
I had so my co-manager Rachel Charles. She had brought in, and I didn't know why it was so important for the person she brought in to be in my locker room, and she insisted on it. But I knew why after the fight. She brought in
Okay.
Braun Strowman, the WWE
Oh, yeah.
fighter.
I
Yeah,
know
she
Braun
brought in
Strowman. Yeah.
she brought
Are you
in Braun
kidding me?
Strowman. I swear to God, I'm not even kidding. She brought in Braun Strowman, flew him in from the States, to Saudi Arabia for my debut. And now Braun Strowman is not a fighter, okay? But he's in my
No.
locker room, and it's exactly what I needed for Braun Strowman. His name is Adam Scher, actually, but I needed
Yeah.
Braun Strowman to be in my locker room, because this guy, who is more prepared and more knowledgeable about fighting in front of huge crowds, than him. So
Oh,
he
he's big. He's actually big in Saudi Arabia.
Oh yeah, he's
He
from
is.
Saudi Arabia as well.
In the
Exactly,
crown jewel.
exactly.
Yes. Yes,
So
very
he
big over
sits
there.
with me in the locker room. The last few minutes of the locker room, Rachel takes everybody out and she leaves Braun Strowman inside. And Braun Strowman tells me, when you're out there, he said, I want you to take a minute. When you're in there, slow down, walk at your own pace, look around, look at your family, look at the people, enjoy that minute, enjoy those seconds. He said, enjoy every part of it. He said, when you get on that ring, he said, it might look stupid, but he said, I want you to close your eyes and just listen. He said, just listen, just enjoy that moment. He said, because you're only going to get it once in your life. I was like, okay. So I start walking. As soon as my feet step out of that locker room, confidence is over the roof. Over the roof. I'm walking. This is my debut now. I've been preparing for this for ages, for decades. Nobody's ever done it. I can't believe I'm the person to do it. This is it. And I'm like, I'm hyped. And as soon as I walk in, I walk very slowly. And when I look up, because it's a whole like stadium type of arena, and I'm looking up,
Yeah.
I hear the roars. I hear like, oh my goodness, I'm hearing and my smile goes from one eye to the other. And I look to my left as soon as I walk out is my family. I didn't even know they were there, that close to the ring. And I'm just like, oh my God. And I turned around, I didn't even care that I was walking towards the camera, or I turned around, I waved at them and I started walking towards the ring, and I got up on the ring. And as David Diamante was announcing my name, as soon as he announced my name, and it's been now a symbol for me, where I put my arms to the side and I put my head up and I close my eyes. And that's exactly what I did, because Braun Strowman told me. He said, close your eyes. And I put my arms to the sides, I put my head up, and I just closed my eyes as soon as David Diamante said Zizo. And the roars and just the sound of everything, the sound of David Diamante himself, everybody cheering. I had, I'm telling you, my confidence was over the roof. Then my name was done. And then Coach Buddy, we start meeting in the middle, referee instructions. Coach Buddy's leaving the ring. He's like, do your thing, baby. Leaves the ring. And I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, well, now,
Yeah, now
now what am I gonna do? I was like, okay, I closed my eyes. I enjoyed the moment, but now it's just a guy in front of me. What am
yeah.
I gonna do now? And
Mhm,
he was a tough Mexican fighter. You know, he had a good amateur background in Mexico, and I know it was my debut, but it was in Saudi. We wanted it to be a good fight, and
mhm,
preparation eliminates doubt. So I was ready for it. And then as soon as we didn't even touch gloves. We were going at it from the first bell. And I remember he it was the first time I ever tasted 8 ounces in my life, you know? And
mhm.
as soon as I took the first like hard punch he threw with an 8 ounce, I saw stars. I saw stars. I was dizzy. I was like, I can't believe this is my debut. I said everything to myself mentally. I said, I can't believe this is my debut. I'm about to fall. He's about to knock me down. This prince is watching. That prince is watching. 15,000 people. Oh my God, what am I going to do? And then I realized I'm also wearing 8 ounce gloves. Boom! Smack him as well. And as soon as I tasted those 8 ounce gloves, I knew I don't want to ever get tasted like that from an 8 ounce gloves. He hit me with a hook like right from the side, and
Oh,
I was seeing everything. I was like, I
mhm.
can't get touched anymore. Started fighting from a distance. Started listening to Buddy because of the adrenaline. I wasn't listening to Buddy when it first started.
Right.
Started listening to Buddy. Started listening to my corner, and I won by knockout in the first round. I just it was really stuff of dreams. It was exactly how I visualized it, and with my
Mhm,
mental performance coach, fight week, we used to close all the lights in the room, go on YouTube and put stadium crowd chants and visualize the fight over and over. Visualize me walking out, visualize the crowd not affecting me, me not getting affected by the crowds. And then with visualization, you always have to visualize positive outcome and negative outcome. So what that means is I would always visualize me knocking him down, him knocking me down, him getting up
mhm,
from the knockdown, and I also get up from the knockdown. So if he gets up from the knockdown, how am I still gonna win the fight? And if I get knocked down and
mhm,
get up from the knockdown, how am I still gonna win the fight? Stick to my plan, visualize the crowd is there, but I'm still in control of my emotions, all that stuff. And the knockout came exactly how I visualized it. He got knocked down, he got back up. I was calm. I didn't go running at him after he got back up. Exactly how we planned for, and it went from there.
Well, the negative comes with knockdowns, and in your second fight,
Oh, there you go.
you're in there and you taste the canvas a little bit.
30,000 people again.
What how was that? How was that?
I mean, it was look, it was my 1,000th time, my 20th thousand time of me being knocked down because of the visualization. So, like I
Mhm,
just told you, and I love how we're speaking about this right after I just said that, is
yeah,
as I visualized me knocking him down, getting up, and I still win the fight, and I don't go crazy and lose it. I also had always visualized myself getting knocked down. How am I going to treat myself if I get knocked down? How am I going to get back up, stick to my plan, manage my emotions, and win the fight? And that's exactly what happened that night. Now I'm not gonna say it was easy. That was the hardest thing I've ever had to face in my life, because I'm co-main event. It's my second fight. It's the Jake Paul Tommy Fury card. It's a 30,000 seater. Everybody's there and we're watching the TV in the locker room. They're interviewing people as they come in. They said, who do you think is gonna win, Jake Paul or Tommy Fury? They're like, we don't even know, we're here for Zizo. So people are just there because Zizo is fighting. So
right,
you and then the build up to that fight is because of the story and the build around me. I'm being moved very differently than other fighters in terms of the opponents that I'm fighting in the beginning. So for the second
yeah,
fight, it was a guy ranked number 2 in Colombia. He was 3-1. and he had two knockouts. And I'm like, okay, this is my second fight. And we go into that fight, and I just couldn't control the crowd. I couldn't control the adrenaline. I couldn't control the crowd. And I let it get to me. I was just trying to knock him out. I was running all over the place. And then he hits me with a right hand, and I didn't feel it. I didn't see it. I blinked, and when I stopped blinking, when I opened my eyes again, I was on the floor. I was on my knees. But it was exactly how I visualized, though. I always visualize myself, no matter how hurt or not hurt I am, I will take the 8 count. I will take the whole
Mhm.
8 count, because sometimes you're hurt, but you don't know it. So if you're given the 8 count, just take the 8 count, take it on your knees, rest your body, rest your head, and get up. I got up on 8, and it was just like how I visualized, when I fell down. What I didn't know, though, was the whole stadium went silent. Everybody went silent. Started thinking about everything in my life. In my life, I mean, how I'm gonna lose my promotional deal, how I've let so many people down, I've let my parents down, how I've worked so hard for this career, I'm now losing it. This is it for me. The media is gonna have fun with this. Oh my god, this is everything is like my head is saying all of this stuff. And what was 8 seconds to everyone was 8 years, 8 hours to me, The whole stadium went silent, but there was a ringing scream. I'm not even saying this like that. I mean it. You could see it even on TV. Someone's screaming in my ear, and it's my sister. My sister is sitting ringside, and it's so loud in my ear. I think because my head was hurting, but it's in a whole
Mhm.
stadium. So I don't know how my ears just zoned in on her, and it was like a scream,
Mhm.
and you could see me on the TV in the replay just pointing to her like, calm down. And by that I meant lower your voice, to be honest. I was like,
Mhm.
calm down, I got this. I wait for the 8 count because they don't know boxing there. And so my sister thought I was just on the ground, like, for absolutely no reason. So, she was like, she's like, what are you doing? Why are you on the floor? Get up, get up. And she's like this. I'm like, there's a reason why I'm on the floor. So I get back up, and I had visualized everything. The referee, wiped my gloves on his shirt. I had visualized everything but one thing. What is he gonna do after I get back up? Is he gonna
Mhm.
knock me out, or is he gonna rush me, or what is gonna happen? And as soon as the ref goes like box, Coach Buddy shouts in that instant. He said he's gonna rush you. Stand your ground. Throw a 1-2. Boom! I stand my ground. I throw a 1-2, and I shake him. And then the round ends.
Oh,
It's a 4 round fight. I got knocked down in the first round. I need to win all 3 rounds
yeah,
convincingly in front of all three judges. I need to have this in the bag. I was on autopilot. My mental performance coach taught me something. When you're met with emotions, you either have three options. You could deal with the emotions and accept them, deal with them, everything's good. You could, dismiss the emotions, disregard the emotions. That's not the best choice. And then the third one is called parking the emotions. Sometimes you have to park the emotions, and what that means is you're dealt with a shock and a run of emotions that you don't have the time right now to deal with, but you will deal with them in the next hour, in the next 2 hours. So we deal with them in the near future, and by near future I mean hour or two. That's it. So when I fell, I was dealt with so many emotions, but I didn't have time to deal with it. I didn't have time to accept it and
yeah.
dismiss it and deal with it. I had to I had to really just park the emotions. So I parked the emotions. I got back up. He rushed me. I threw a 1-2, went back as I visualized exactly, stuck to my game plan, and I listened to everything Coach Buddy said, went back to my jab. I calmed down, and I was on autopilot, man. I was in a different zone because I wasn't about to lose my second fight. I wasn't about to lose my career, and I wasn't about to make so many people lose their own hopes, lose their own dreams, lose their own goals and what they're trying to do because they see me doing it. If
Right.
I'm the Saudi professional boxer, if I'm the Arab professional boxer who's doing it because no one's ever done it before, I want to show them that no one's ever done it before because they didn't continue long enough. They didn't try hard enough, not because we were not good enough. That's a different
Mhm.
story. So I just couldn't do it. And when your back's against the wall, the only way is forward, and that's the only thing I had.
A couple things there. One is Colombian boxers usually can bang. They're usually one of the hardest punchers
I
that
know
they
that.
have there. So from going, taking your second fight against someone from Colombia, usually they steer away from there. You met that head on. That's pretty good.
Oh yeah.
Secondly, your manager Rachel, very smart. Having someone like Braun Strowman in your,
Oh yeah. Oh, that
having
was
the mental stuff to help you there. The third thing was why Buddy McGirt's so good. There's only a
a.
couple things you can do when you get buzzed like that. You either throw back or cover up.
Mhm.
You threw back because it threw him off,
Yeah,
and bang, you got him.
exactly.
Very smart, and he said it right at the right time.
Right on the time, because what Buddy is like a coach is the only thing he cares about most is as soon as he says it, it's the second you do it. So he's not going to
Mhm.
tell you something to do, and it's not the second you're supposed to do it. That's just how he is as a coach. So when you're sparring, as soon as he says 1, 2, it's now. It's now, not eventually, not when you see an opening. He says it when he sees it, and you need to trust that he sees it even if you don't. So you throw it, just throw it. And that's how he is. So he, when in the corner in that fight, he said it only at the time as the guy was already rushing in. So it was, yeah, it's really great just having this team around me. And I remember when I went back to the locker room, there are a lot of stuff, as you probably know, people don't see, where sometimes you're
Mhm.
done with the fight, but you're not really done with the fight. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it
Yep.
takes sometimes it takes days, sometimes it takes weeks. But after that, even though I had won the fight, I was in that locker room fighting a different fight here. And I was just getting destroyed
Yeah.
mentally. And I remember what Buddy said. He was like, listen, man, you got knocked down in a 4 rounder. You got up and won convincingly. He said, if you think getting knocked down was the problem, he said, this is first grade. He said that exactly. He said, this is first grade. He said, a mechanic gets his hands dirty, a construction worker gets dusty, and a boxer gets knocked down. That's just how it is. He said that. And ever since,
Wow.
it's just like
Wow.
anything can happen in boxing. It's just how you deal with it that matters. And that sentence I said about half an hour ago on the podcast, but I said life. Anything can happen in life.
Mhm.
It's just how you deal with it. So boxing and life are exactly the same in those aspects. It's not even a joke. It's really like that.
And you got that just by the stuff you're telling me now about having Buddy McGirt with you, you got a great team surrounding you.
Thank God, yeah.
Um, Respectfully, Buddy McGirt is one of the top trainers out there. Your your managing company is great.
A teacher.
They've done a great job.
Yeah, he's a
So,
teacher. I have Coach Buddy, and I have Rachel, and I have Paul Smith as well. He's my
oh
manager.
yeah.
So yeah, so it's just it's so much knowledge to be around, and the only thing you could do is just listen.
So Zizo, where do you see yourself in about 5 years? What's the plan?
I don't worry about that. I stay
Mhm.
I stay in now. I stay in today. I used to be the biggest worrier about that. If Because the thing is, if I say where do I see myself in 5 years, it makes me go crazy if something doesn't happen now. But if I
Yeah.
don't have that in my head, if something doesn't happen now, then it's okay. It's gonna happen eventually. And so I'll answer that question, but I'll say eventually I want to see myself as the first ever world champion for Saudi Arabia, the Arab world, the first ever undisputed world champion for Saudi Arabia and the Arab world, the first ever multi-weight world champion, the first ever unified world champion. So many first evers that are in line, but the biggest one also is to see you know, the second one come and do it, the third one come and do it, the other Saudi Arabian fighters come and do it, the other Arab fighters to come and do it, and I want to be that. And I say that, and I said that at the press conference. He said, "How do you feel when you fight in Saudi?" I said, "I feel like a superhero." That's really how I feel like.
Mhm.
Because when
Mhm.
you're younger, you always look up to Batman, Superman, Spider-Man. But when you realize, because you want to be like them, you want to be Spider-Man, you want to
Mhm.
be Superman, you want to be that person. When you realize it's not real, then you start you start wanting to be like the athletes. That's why so many younger kids, they idolize athletes because they want to be them. And I know, when I understand that I'm in that spot, so I want to be bigger. This is a larger than life story. I want to be bigger than boxing, bigger than the sports actor aspect. I want to be a figure and a representative for Saudi Arabia Vision 2030 and all the sports and everything that's happening in it. But I hope if 100% of my story can inspire just 5% of someone else's story, then I've done more than enough.
Well, Zizo, I can tell you, you've inspired a lot of people, including me. Now, I mean, honestly, talking to you, and I say this because I'm in the business world too, a boxing, but a business too.
Yeah.
You have a career in not only just because of the way you speak and the way you talk and the way you break things down, and obviously you're a psychology major, but you have a career after boxing in helping people get to where they want to go and their goals. You really do. I mean,
I appreciate that so much. That
don't
means the
sleep on
world.
that.
That means the
Don't
world, man.
sleep on that, because
I
what you've
won't.
been through in your life is uh, to get to where you are, and you're talking about doing something no one's ever done. You're going to blaze your own trail.
Yeah.
You've done something that no one's going to be doing. You're the first. Like I said, there's always a Mandela. There's always a Martin Luther King. There's always a Malala. You are that person for the Saudi boxing community.
Hopefully, man. I swear that
You will
means
be. No, you
the
are.
world. That you never get used to hearing stuff like that, and that always means the world. That's what keeps me going, and I hope so. I hope I'm given that privilege every single day. Hopefully.
Well, you definitely have my backing, because I honestly, when I first had to try to get the research and talking with
Yeah.
Rachel and getting things together, I didn't know what kind of interview I would get here. I didn't know. I didn't know
Mhm.
what your wanted to talk about or what have you. But talking to you is like talking to like a brother, because I want you to be successful to help all the other people, and
Likewise. Likewise.
it's a joy to have you on this podcast. It really is, and it's
Thank you.
I'd love to do a part 2 when you are fighting,
Of course.
um,
Of course. Of
before a
course.
fight.
I'm
That way
always
I
open.
can have my audience see what it's like for someone, a professional boxer who's got the Arab world on his back in the
Yeah.
boxing game. What it's
Definitely.
like, what you're going through.
Exactly. Definitely. You got it.
All right, and if you're willing to do that, I'm gonna hold you to it.
Yeah. Hold me to it now. You got my word.
Okay, so do you have any social media right now that you can give out that they can follow you?
Yeah, follow me on the real Zizo on Instagram. That's the social medias
Mhm.
I have right now, and it's the rest
Okay,
you gotta
good.
focus on.
Well, again, it has been a pleasure to have you
It was
on
my
the Zapata
pleasure.
Brand
Thank you
podcast.
so much.
And if you guys need anything, reach out to us. I'll be talking to Rachel soon. We want to do something a little bit more with you, if that's possible, part 2.
For sure. For sure. For sure.
Oh, and again, thank you very much. Zizo, good luck to you, buddy.
It was my pleasure. I'll see you soon. And thank you for the
You will.
platform. Thank you for the platform and the opportunity. These are all dreams that I've been dreaming about since I was a kid, to be on podcasts like these. So it's just my privilege.
You're going to get there, buddy.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for watching the Zapata Brand podcast. Please subscribe to the podcast and listen where all podcasts are available.